Hello, this is take two of this video, but I want to give my impressions or opinions or thoughts on the recently concluded World Chess Championship in Dubai. This is December 2021. I think I have 3 or 4 thoughts here, if I can remember them all. One is, let me have an old man moment. I was born 3 weeks after the conclusion of Bobby Fischer's first World Chess Championship in 1972. That tells you how old I am. But as you might imagine, if you weren't around back then, we would hear about that fairly instantly on the radio. And sometimes you would hear a news snippet, about 10 seconds about it that evening on the evening news on TV. But to get a detailed analysis or to be able to see a list of the moves, you would have to wait till the next day's newspaper. If you lived in a big city, in a medium or small city, you probably wouldn't get that. You'd have to wait for the next Chess Life magazine or something to get mailed to you. But to have what we had this time, and probably the last few, but I wasn't paying attention to chess during the last few, the instant and live access to every moment of every game on YouTube and other platforms, that was amazing. I watched, I would say, parts of almost every game and significant portions of about half of them, including the longest one, which, if you hadn't heard, set a world record or a world championship record for the longest world championship chess game. It lasted almost 8 hours straight and over 130 moves, 136 moves. I've got it pulled up on my screen over here. I watched the last 2 or 3 hours of that, including the portion where they went past the previous record, and it was nice. So yeah, give me that old man moment that, wow, it's so nice to have the internet these days. Sorry. But the second thing is, I'm a kind of a skeptical person. It takes me a while to be convinced of things. Before this, I wouldn't say I was completely convinced that Magnus Carlsen was the greatest chess player of all time. Certainly the best one now, and certainly one of the greatest of all time. He had the highest rating ever at one point. But I think now I'm convinced he's the greatest chess player of all time. I think if you took him back in time to 1970s and played Bobby Fischer, or the 1980s and 90s and played Kasparov, or even earlier and played, the giants of the early 20th century that we read about in chess books, I think he would beat most of them, or I think he would beat all of them most of the time, if not all of them all of the time. For one thing, he's studied their games and they haven't studied his games. For another thing, he's studied with engines. There's a lot of these moves, as all the commentators kept saying, these are moves that didn't exist or that nobody would have played at the master level 50 years ago, 30 years ago, but they're playing them now fairly commonly because they've studied with Stockfish and Leela, whatever the other engines are. But watching Magnus systematically, consistently dismantle the opposition game after game after game was downright impressive. And even that 8-hour game where both players are completely exhausted and rubbing their eyes constantly and look like they're about to fall asleep, he was still going move after move. When you plug those moves into the engine, 95-98% of them are the top engine recommended move, and the rest of them are pretty close. So I'm convinced. And the third thing, kind of a downer for me, again mentioning my age, but watching these games convinced me that chess is definitely a young person's game. Teens, 20s, 30s, your memory is sharp, all your gears are clicking, every cylinder of your mind is running full steam. And when you start to get to my age, so many things have been pumped into your mind and remembered and forgotten. Had to memorize, 100 things for one job and a dozen things for another job, and college is 30 years ago. When you start trying to memorize new things like chess moves and openings, like these guys had some of these openings memorized down to 30 moves with multiple variations per move. And their commentators continually talking about well, this is move 32, and they've both reached these positions before in other games, or this transposes into whatever game. And then after the game, those players would be interviewed, and they would be aware that that was a position reached in a previous game 5 years earlier, 12 years earlier. And that's something that I'm just going to guess, trying not to be ageist here, but very few people in the second half of their lives are able to do. So I'm going to keep playing chess. I'm going to keep having fun. I'm going to keep studying and trying to be better, just if nothing else to keep my mind active. But somebody starting at my age just really doesn't have a snowball's chance in where to play like that. But anyway, going forward, one thing I plan to do on my own, probably not for videos, is just go through these games move by move. They're available. I'm looking at them right now on chess.com, and I assume they're available on Lichess and other sites. I'm going to go through them move by move and try to determine what was the point of those moves, what they prevent, what they allow, what the idea was, which squares they're trying to protect or defend or attack, or whether they're trying to reroute the piece or whether that's the ideal position for that piece. And hopefully that'll make me a better player. But anyway, let me know your impressions of the World Chess Championship in the comments. And thank you for watching.